reading to St. John, the 10th chapter.
Glory to you, O Lord.
Jesus said, "Very truly I tell you, anyone who does not enter the sheepfold by the gate, but climbs in by another way, is a thief and a bandit. The one who enters by the gate is the shepherd of the sheep. The gatekeeper opens the gate for him, and the sheep hear his voice. He calls his own sheep by name and leads them out. When he has brought out all his own, he goes ahead of them, and the sheep follow him because they know his voice. They will not follow a stranger, but they will run from him because they do not know the voice of strangers." Jesus used this figure of speech with them, but they did not understand what he was saying to them. So again, Jesus said to them, "Very truly I tell you, I am the gate for the sheep. All who came before me are thieves and bandits, but the sheep did not listen to them. I am the gate. Whoever enters by me will be saved and will come in and go out and find pasture. The thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. I came that they may have life and have it abundantly." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, O Christ.
You may be seated. Lord, please bless these words from my mouth and take ears of those who will hear them. Well, my friends, I did not expect to be standing up here again so soon, especially after my last sermon. I really didn't think Pastor Jackie was going to ask me to come back. So, as Pastor Jackie asked me to come today, I got really excited once I realized what the message was, what our gospel text and our readings for today. As we see on the front of our bulletin, today is often called Good Shepherd Sunday. And this happens to be one of my favorites, just personally. I love Psalm 23. And John 10:10 is a verse of scripture that has a lot of deep meaning for me. And if you were here a couple of weeks ago for my last sermon, I even talked about it a little bit there. So, now, as I was sitting down, though, to figure out what it is that I would talk about today, after my excitement, the initial excitement kind of wore off, and I was really seriously praying, God, there's so much here. What do you want me to talk about? And all of these things really just kept kind of bombarding me. So I figured out the best thing for me to do, so that I'm not all over the place, is to simply kind of walk it through, like break it down step by step. So we'll start with our gospel text. Now in verse 1, Jesus says, "Very truly I tell you, anyone who does not enter the sheepfold by the gate, but climbs in by another way, is a thief and a bandit." The notes in my New King James Study Bible say that a sheepfold, which is another word for sheep pen, but it was a walled enclosure. High fence, made with stakes. It had one door, right? And maybe it was a cave. Often these things were a cave back then. So if we can visualize or imagine, this sheepfold is something that has very defined boundaries, right? And it's only got one true way in or out. One door, one gate. And then that led me to think about the boundaries of the sheepfold are much like the boundaries and the parameters of the Christian life that are outlined for us in the New Testament. They serve a purpose. They're there for a reason. They offer protection from harm, danger. They provide for us a loving and carefully curated environment that's suitable for the optimal care and well-being of those who are in it. It's a place of safety and comfort, a place that we can rest and find assurance. Now, one of the other Bibles that I have at home is a Life Application Study Bible. And the notes in that one told me that at night, sheep were often gathered into this sheepfold, right, to protect them from thieves and from weather and from wild animals. And of course, it could be caves or, again, things that are surrounded by walls, stones, all of that kind of stuff. So I'm thinking, okay, I'm getting the idea. But what was interesting was it added that the shepherd often slept across the doorway of the to protect the sheep. So wild animals would be, they would be deterred from trying to come in because here is the shepherd laying in the doorway. And the sheep probably wouldn't try to get out because, again, here is the shepherd laying in the doorway. And as I contemplated this, it brought into stark clarity for me the realization that Jesus, our good shepherd, is prepared to literally stand in between us and everything else. All the dangers and distractions of the world, all of the attacks that the enemy crafts and launches at us at various times of our lives, sometimes our days, all of the things that would attempt to drag us away from the diligent care of our good shepherd. And as I thought about this a little bit more, we know this, right? Because Jesus actually tells us this. If we look at John 10:11, which is just one more verse past our gospel text today, he says, I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. He is willing. He has already proved to us that the love of the Father is so great that he would give his only Son to take the sins of the world to the cross, that he would suffer unspeakable anguish in his physical death and then be raised to life again on the third day. My friends, Jesus is willing. The question is, are we? Are we willing to submit to the boundaries of protection and correction, mercy and grace, forgiveness and love? Are we willing to surrender to the divine diligence of our good shepherd? To trust that the life he offers is way more than enough, and certainly more than what we could ever do on our own? Are we willing to listen to him? Now in verse 3 and 4 from our gospel text, Jesus says that the gatekeeper opens the gate for him, and the sheep hear his voice. He calls his own sheep by name and leads them out. And when he has brought out all his own, he goes ahead of them, and the sheep follow him because they know his voice. And here again, I have questions, right? I feel like it's always questions with me. The sheep follow him because they know his voice. And so again, I had to ask, am I following? Or am I trying to run out in front and hoping he's going to come with me? Am I following, and do I really know the sound of his voice? Now, for some people, as you ask yourself this question, do I really know the sound of his voice? I think some people will answer with a resounding yes. They know the voice of the Good Shepherd well. They're intimately familiar with his sound. They are intuitively aware of his own personal communication with them, the special way that he communicates with them. There's a distinct knowing when it comes to the voice of the Lord. And then for others, I think that there's uncertainty. I think maybe we think we hear, but we're not sure. So maybe we run out ahead because we think we hear, but really we heard wrong. Or maybe we don't move at all because we can't decide what we hear. I want to offer some assurance that if you happen to be in the uncertain category, there is hope. There is grace for our mistakes, and there is room to grow in our relationship with Christ. When we focus on the shepherd, things have a way of becoming a bit more clear and simple, though not always easy. As we continue to develop that relationship, we more distinctly learn to recognize the voice of our shepherd in our lives, and we desire to run toward it instead of toward the voices of the strangers that Jesus talks about in verse 5. Now, if we will jump down to verse 8, Jesus says, I am the gate. Whoever enters by me will be saved and will come in and go out and find pasture. And likewise in verse 2 of our psalm today, Psalm 23, David writes, the Lord makes me lie down in green pastures, leads me beside still waters. Now, I don't know about you, but when I think about green pastures, I think about what they look like out in like Montana or something, somewhere in the Western world, right? Lush, green, rolling hills, full of abundant sustenance. And I definitely think that we can take this and we can keep that idea, because that represents for us the goodness and abundance that the Lord has for us and provides for us. But I'd also like to offer a different perspective for us to consider. The actual geographic landscape around Bethlehem and the Judean mountains and the wilderness where David wrote this psalm, it looks nothing like lush green fields. It's actually mostly brown and dry. And there's actually less than like 30 inches of rainfall a year out there, so it is nothing. There's nothing peaceful and green and grass, it's nothing like what we would imagine. And shepherding a flock through this kind of terrain is hard work. It requires absolute commitment from the shepherd, an intimate knowledge of the land and where to find sufficient pasture for his flock to feed, and an ever watchful eye to protect the flock from predators and other dangers and hazards of that kind of terrain. One might take a look at that landscape, I know I certainly did, as I pulled up pictures, right? You guys know I love to Google something. Pull up pictures of it and wonder how a flock of anything can survive out there. But under the diligent care of the watchful shepherd, the flock not only survive, but they thrive in that environment, in that landscape. And as they continually move across it, the shepherd ensures that the needs of the flock for today are met. Likewise, our Good Shepherd provides for our needs today. We're not guaranteed tomorrow. None of us are guaranteed tomorrow. All we have is today. And that is the promise of provision. It's our daily bread that we have enough for today. Now, I've been saving up for this one, right? I'm going to now direct your attention to verse 10 from the gospel reading, right? John 10:10. And this one actually holds a ton of really helpful information for us. And it can even be helpful for those of us who are in that uncertain camp when it comes to hearing and recognizing when the Lord is speaking to us. So verse 10 is a two-parter. Jesus tells us about a thief, and then he tells us about himself. In the first part, Jesus says that the thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. And those words are incredibly accurate descriptions of exactly what the enemy intends for us. He comes to steal our time, joy, and energy. And friends, with all of the distractions that are available to us in this day and age, this is one that, quite frankly, I think we make it way too easy for him to succeed in stealing, taking our attention away from what really matters. He comes to kill our hopes and our dreams and our desires, not only with the distractions, but with the narrative that the world offers that you have to be a certain way or you have to do a certain thing in order to attain what the world would deem success. He plants the seeds of doubt and makes us question if we really will be able to start our own business, travel around the world on mission trips, or even just to fully pursue the life that God is calling us to lead. And he comes to destroy our confidence, our sense of value and self-worth, with the whispers of not good enough and who do you think you are to be different? He feeds us lies about our worthiness, about what other people think of us, and about how we'll never really measure up or be as good as that person over there. It is the cunning and craftiness of the enemy, the smooth-talking thief, that threatens to hold us down in the darkness. But thanks be to God that that's not our only option, because that's only one part of the verse. Jesus finished verse 10 with, I came that they may have life and have it abundantly. And and as we put our focus on the life and abundance that Jesus offers us, we will be better able to discern between the voice of the shepherd and the voice of the stranger. If it isn't life-affirming, if it doesn't hold the characteristics of God, goodness, mercy, kindness, love, grace, righteousness, then guess what, friends? It isn't from God. Notice that I didn't say that it was easy or that it would make you feel good 100% of the time, because often when we are convicted by the Holy Spirit, it's not comfortable. It's rarely ever comfortable. If you guys get convicted and you're comfortable about it, let me know, because I want to know what you did. But it's for our good, right? What God says is good for us. God is never going to tell you to cheat, steal, or lie. He's never going to call you to lash out in anger. He's not going to tell you to belittle one of his children. He's never going to tell you that you aren't good enough. So bear that in mind as you're listening for the voice of the Good Shepherd to speak into your life. Know that the Lord is never out of character, and he's never going to give you the go-ahead to do that wrong thing just this once. All right, now I've got one more thing to share, and then I'm going to go sit back down. Part of my love for Psalm 23 comes from a deeper understanding that I learned through a book called A Shepherd Looks at Psalm 23. It's written by W. Philip Keller. If you've never heard of it, if you've never read it, I highly recommend it. It will completely change the way you look at this psalm. He shares from his own experience as a shepherd and a sheep rancher in Africa. So his landscape actually looked a little similar, much more similar to the landscape of David than what we would think out in Montana. I don't even know if that's what they do in Montana, but that's what always comes to mind for me. But he talks about the first part of verse 6. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life. And he brings up a really valid question that I think we have to ask ourselves. Does goodness and mercy follow you? Now, as I was thinking about it, I don't know how you view this particular verse, but I always kind of viewed this like, well, goodness and mercy are, they're like coming on behind me and they're going to go everywhere I go with me, and like they're my buddies, they're my pals, they're coming with me. But as he continued to dig into this, he asked questions like, are you leaving a trail of goodness and mercy, of kindness and forgiveness? Is that what's leaving? Is that what you're leaving wherever you go? Or are you leaving a trail of heartache and hurt, of trials, tears? So, I don't know why God likes to put all of these deep thinking questions into into myself, other than just so I can come here and share them all with you and let you guys think deep for a while. But I'll leave these with you to ponder over and consider your interactions with people, whether they're close family members, friends, acquaintances, even the grocery store clerk, right? People who are strangers to us. And ask yourself if you are leaving the pleasant aroma of goodness and mercy wherever you go. And if the answer is no, ask the Good Shepherd what you can do to change that. Thanks be to God.